Well, I am insanely pumped to be here with you, Parth. You're one of, I don't know if I've said this, but you're one of my all-time favorite founders, and I have immense respect and admiration for the work that you're doing for our country. So
Appreciate that.
thank you for that, and thank you for being here. This is also the first ever client interview that we're doing for Pursuit. So appreciate you being the guinea pig and joining us.
All
But
right.
thanks for being here, man.
I appreciate it. No, that's exciting to hear. I didn't realize this is the first ever too. So that makes
Yeah.
it yeah.
Exactly. So let's just get started for everyone's context out there. Tell us about Polymorphic's mission and how you got started.
Absolutely. Yeah. So at Polymorphic, our big focus is around making customer service easier for governments and in turn making it more delightful for their residents and businesses. And how we got started. So my family background, my grandfather worked in local government his whole career. And I started my career actually as a software engineer doing computer science, AI, machine learning. But then when I had a chance to work with this small company that was in the smart city space, I kind of jumped on it given that family background. And what I saw was there's all this talk around data analytics and things like that. But the number one problem that every local government faces is really customer service, right? They have too many phone calls, too many emails,
Yep.
too many resident calls coming in. And so we said, how can we help them manage that whole mess? And so that's what we do at Polymorphic.
Yeah, got it. And I would imagine that if you look back over the last 20 years, that the number of interactions that governments are having with their citizens they've got to gone through the roof, and they're probably more digital than ever, I'd imagine, right?
They've gone through the roof. They're more digital than ever. I also think what's interesting is the expectations are higher.
Yeah, right.
When 20 years ago, you might have been okay with the fact that I submit something, I hear back in the mail 3 weeks later, and that's an okay interaction.
Right,
Today,
right.
we're not. We expect kind of the status updates and
Yeah,
transparency, and so that's also changed as well. In addition, just the raw number increasing.
yeah. Really interesting. And I didn't know that about your family background. What's like an example customer story that you're most proud of so far?
Yeah, and I think the one I love is we work with this small borough in New Jersey, Prospect Park. And since then, the county they're in, which is Passaic County, is huge, has joined as well. But Prospect Park was the one we started with there. And they had this really funny example where in New Jersey, they don't call public records requests public records requests. They call them Oprah requests. And so it was just this very interesting example of like, if you really broke down the details of it, what happened when people would want to make a public records request, they go to the website, couldn't find it.
Ah, because
So
it was
they
just
call
different
in
words.
different words. They're different words. It's an old like keyword search, doesn't really work. So call in front desk. Front desk would help them navigate to this PDF form online. You fill
Yep.
out the PDF, you'd had to cut a check. And then internally they manage it all on paper because you actually got to produce those records. There's no
Right.
notification system, anything like that. And then 3 weeks later, you get this mailed document back or email like, hey,
Right.
here are the records. And we're really pumped about it because I love that example because what we've done is we started with this AI search tool. So now it's smart enough to know public records means Oprah request,
Yeah.
points them directly to a digital application. So you just fill out a digital web form. You can pay by credit card or ACH.
Amazing.
And then internally they have this notification system. So it takes something that used to take 3 weeks into 3 days. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really cool example of every part of that process now looks like it's part of the 21st century.
And I'd have to imagine with that example that it just greatly reduces the amount of work that has to be done by the city and the number of things that they got to keep in the back of their mind. So especially at a time where there's a lot of vacancy, right? I imagine this brings a lot of leverage to their workflow every day.
100%. And I think that's something that a lot of city managers are kind of grappling with. They know that there's vacancy already. I think what's more concerning is it's only going to grow.
Right.
They have so many folks who are near retirement. They really can't attract that new talent in. So the question has now become, when over half your budget, and these are massive budgets we're talking about, are your staff, and the staff is kind of the thing you've been able to fill your gaps with.
Yeah.
When that doesn't exist anymore, where do you find efficiencies? And so that's really what we're focused on, is making sure that they can still provide that level of service, better service, with these kind of looming challenges.
Totally. That's a good segue into the next thing I wanted to ask you about. So, when you're a startup or a growing software company, one of the things you're trying to nail down is the product. You already talked about that. The other thing you got to nail down is your go to market. What's been the most challenging part about selling to government? Yeah, I think everyone says like, oh, selling to government's so hard. The
Yeah.
processes are complicated, they take a long time, but I'd love your view on that. What's the hardest part or parts?
I'd say so. So by far, like the number one biggest challenge I would say would be they are, it's hard to break in. And that I think poses a very unique challenge because it's such a relationship and trust-based sale. And so when you're new, you're trying to build that up.
Right.
And I think for a lot of folks who come in, they expect that, hey, the best product is going to win. And it's not the case. And I
Yeah.
think that's especially not the case in government. So that's one piece that makes it difficult. I think the other piece is timelines are a little tricky, right? Like
Yep.
governments, I think long term, they align with the value you offer. And something I've been thinking a lot about lately is just like how you align product pricing with the value you can provide. But in the short term, they have budget considerations. So it's a very weird buyer too in that sense, which is unlike the private sector, they can usually long term align whatever they're paying with the value they're receiving. But in the short term, you kind of have to work with them. Like their budget may get set in June. Okay, well you can't
Yeah.
build them until then, right?
Yeah.
You might be talking to them in January, but they're looking at June. So I think that timing stuff can often add these interesting wrenches, which is,
Yep.
uh, yeah, it takes time in certain cases, longer than you'd like because it's on
Yeah.
a set schedule.
Yeah. The process, like the mechanics of just landing a deal. If both
Right.
parties say like, yes, this is a good fit, the mechanics of actually getting that done seem substantially more challenging in the public sector than in private sector. Is that
Exactly.
okay?
I think that's
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
on the relationship side, what have you found works? So, like you talked about the example where you guys signed up Prospect Park and then the county around them,
Yeah.
signed up later. That implies, folks are talking and, you're able to
Yeah.
leverage the good work you do for one town for a neighboring town. How do you think about that?
And so this is what I would say is one of the benefits of selling to government, which is they're collaborative, right? They're not, if you sell to a private sector company, let's say I sold some tool to Brex, and then
Right.
Ramp
Try
is,
to sign up ramp. Yeah.
Brex doesn't want Ramp to know that, like, hey,
Yeah.
we're getting a competitive advantage out of this. Whereas with cities and counties and states, they want to share that.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a lot of that conversation. The relationships really compound when, there's conferences, they have professional organizations. So when they start to present like, hey, here's something that's working for us,
Hmm.
uh, they are all struggling with the same challenges, right? Almost
Right.
all, no one's going to say that, hey, we wish we had more phone calls we couldn't get to, right?
Yeah.
We wish
Totally.
we had
Right.
more paper processes that take time, right? So what really goes a long way is we try to over deliver on that first one and really show folks like what we can do. And we're fortunate to have in many states these champions who are like, hey, this is what we should be doing, and they
Yeah.
they start to really share that with their neighbors.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then on kind of the technology infrastructure side for your go-to-market team,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I hope you don't mind. Like I think you publicly
yeah,
shared that you raise money,
right.
and you're starting to build out the go-to-market team and infrastructure.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about that. What does kind of like the tech stack look like? And if you could share what your go-to-market team that you're building, it looks like in your mind's eye.
Yeah. So the way we're kind of thinking about building out a go-to-market team, it's very regional, recognizing these relationships, and we want to be able to spend time in person with folks. So we have Southeast is a big region for us, kind of anchored by North Carolina, Great Lakes, Midwest, anchored by Wisconsin right now, Northeast anchored by New Jersey. And so the way we think about that is, having someone who's leading that region. And then as they
Yep.
grow, obviously, we can bring on more folks, and then they're paired up with someone on the client success side. And that's, I think, something unique we do, which is we really prioritize
Yeah.
someone who's going to actually be able to fulfill that level of customer service we historically have.
Yeah. So that's on the client success side. That's
That's
a
on the client
human,
side.
that's a polymorphic employed human.
Polimorphic person, exactly.
Yeah.
And the go-to-market, there's a salesperson for those
Yep.
regions as well.
Yep.
Um, in terms of our tech stack, I'll start historically and then with Pursuit,
Yeah.
because I think that's probably the best way to put it. So historically, we used a few tools to, for us, what's really important is when we go to a conference, when we go to, when we're in the area, let's say we're implementing with a client, there's really kind of three big campaigns, I guess, in government that people talk about, which is like, I'm at a conference, I'm in the area, we just
Yep.
launch with a client, like really simply, like that's what you
Yep.
do. And one of the hard parts historically would be we really only had a way of sharing those with city managers and maybe mayors in the council. But sometimes when we're working with folks, we're working with a certain department and other
Right.
departments nearby want to hear about that. And so with Pursuit, I think that's been something we've been really excited about is actually we're getting the ability to see like who is in which department, how we can get a hold of them as well. So that way when we work on a new project, we can share those case studies with relevant parties more easily.
And that goes kind of like further down the organization than like just
Yeah,
the head of finance, for instance, or
exactly.
of
Yeah,
public engagement. Yeah.
right.
I want to go back to something you said a moment ago because I'm curious about it. So you talked about how Southeast was anchored by North Carolina, I think, and then Wisconsin in the Great Lakes region. What was
Mhm.
it about those areas that made them anchors? Like, was it just someone thought it was cool and was willing to take a risk? Like, what exactly was it that allowed you to get them as an anchor client?
Honestly, that was it. And as someone who's, I think specifically, I'm actually happy to shout out the folks too for us, which is it was some really innovative clients in each region, right?
Yeah.
So Scott Attaway in North Carolina, Intishan in New Jersey, and then Andy in Wisconsin. All three of them have been they're unique clients. Like we really like hold them dear because they were the ones who were like, here's how I want the product to work. I
Right.
know this was before we had even building it, right? They're like,
Yeah.
I know this is what you're thinking, but here's how it should work.
Yeah.
And we're really
Amazing.
patient. Yeah, it's like this perfect balance of they're patient, like they get that, okay, this is something that's going to be a work in progress, but we're going to push you guys. Like
Yeah.
this is what we think it can look like. Like they're very ambitious in what they want out of the software,
Yeah.
right? And it's funny because most customers they're amazing and they're like, here's what it is in any space. But I'd say they're unique in that they really made it possible. Then once they start to see the stuff like, hey, this is really helping, like
Yeah.
they're the first people to share it, right? They're like,
Yep.
look, this is huge. Everyone needs this. Let's get everyone on this in the region.
And it was trial and error for you to find those people. Just took time. You had to talk
Yeah,
to 1,000 people and you find a small
you
percentage of
find
those.
one. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and we're lucky that we had a chance with them, and we're looking for more in different states, right?
Yeah.
So it's always kind of a work in progress there.
Yeah. When you think back at that, is there anything about those cities or those local governments, or was it like something that you could have observed from the data?
Mm.
Like, could you have gone like if you had perfect information, do you think you could have like looked at who else they contracted with, or was there any marker that might have informed that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing was each of them where they're all very different as individuals, right?
Yeah.
So like, Intishan's one of the youngest borough managers.
Okay.
Andy's well known in Wisconsin. He's done like amazing work. But I think the thing that ties them all together is they're actually very small. They're all in small municipalities.
Okay.
And I think if we had coupled that with the fact that they're seeing growth or they're trying to, achieve efficiencies for some reason,
Hmm.
against the fact that for other software they'd use, they had always been the first adopter or one of the first adopters in their state. So
Okay.
they did a historical pattern of this, right?
Love
It's
that.
not something like that's the best way you can tell that they're
Yeah.
innovative, right? They've always wanted to be the first.
So it's a
Um,
few things. If I summarize, it sounds like in your case at least, and I don't know if this is like all of the cases, but it was a small growing community. Sounds like, is that right?
exactly.
Okay. Maybe a young person, leading that department or that community, and probably most telling, they were the first to pioneer XYZ other things in the future or in the past, rather.
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
love that.
it's
And that data exists. And I think like that's one
right.
of the core things that we hope to be able to, share with Pursuit is, either, like you're describing, it takes a long time to do trial and error and meet these people over the course of 2 years. Meanwhile, you had to raise money, you had to cut payroll, that cycle time matters, from your perspective.
Oh
So if we
yeah,
can help you shorten that cycle time, huge, right?
it's huge.
Yeah,
And
and
then
then the other option, so you can either take
right,
a while and figure it out yourself, or you can hire a sales rep who like knows a region or a state, and they know so and so is the progressive person who does all the new innovative stuff. But you got to
mhm,
hire that person, and that costs money. They may or may not actually know what they're talking about, so there's risk and time there too. So it's just
yeah.
the data exists, and I think that's one of the things that we're hoping to unlock is just to make that broadly applicable. I know you know that, but that's what we're at.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the other piece of that too, which is that's just the beginning, right? Like when you get your first, I'm talking about
Right,
like three of our, we're around 40 customers now. So like, what do the other ones look like? And I think the
right,
point is like once you have that too, that's still not enough because
right.
now you need to say like who looks similar to them, right?
Totally.
You have it's like early, what's it called? The innovators, early adopters,
Yeah,
early
yeah, yeah.
adopters.
I was
Like
thinking about that same
exactly
term.
like that. Like, so how do you get there then? And so
Right.
I think the data applies to that whole cycle, like regardless of
Yep.
what stage you're in. I think
Yep.
that's what drew us to Pursuit, frankly, and we've talked about that at length, of course.
Yeah. 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 I love that. Thanks for sharing. So, a couple other questions. When you think about the kind of the go-to-market machine that you're building, what holes, and maybe we just covered one of them, but like, are there any other holes that you think Pursuit filled?
I would say another one that's been kind of useful for us is when we start to engage with a city, sometimes they know one of the common conversations. So we work with the city manager most often because
Yeah.
we're usually doing our software is unique in that almost every department can leverage it. It's used for
Yep.
internal processes, public facing processes. So we fill the gaps where they kind of don't have software.
Yep.
That's also a tricky prospect
Totally.
because and now I got to think about if I'm like one, who do you sell to? And usually it's a city manager because they're like, look, I have purview over a whole organization. I'm thinking about organization wide efficiency I want to bring.
Yep.
I think you add on to that. What happens in a lot of conversations is they'll say like, look, I see the value for this. I have a few department heads that come to mind,
Yeah.
but what really would make it compelling for them is, hey, I know if you've reached out to 5 other departments and got some interest from them and see that there's value, then I can run a project where we can start with a few departments and then really expand over time, right?
Right. Yep.
So that's actually a big hole that it's helped us fill because you don't want to manually go out and collect all that. And you don't
Yeah.
also want to put the pressure on or just the effort on the city manager of like, which department should we reach out to? Like,
Right.
can you get us their contact info? It's on the website, but like doing that for every single one you
Yeah.
do
It's
gets
painstaking.
it's
Yeah.
painstaking. And other lists out there, other services out there that offer kind of, how can you get in touch with these folks? Contact information. They don't
Yep.
have that for that depth, right? And
Totally.
that's what I hinted at earlier. And so that's
Yeah.
been a big hole it's filled too.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. The way we try to think about our job as it relates to contacts is we want to win on breadth. So not just states, not just municipalities, not just counties, but special districts, higher
Mhm.
ed, at K through 12, right? Like we can cover all those. We can go deeper in the org. And then I think one thing that'll be cool as time plays on, it's not as relevant yet because we're so new, but as time rolls on, something that you talked about before of like, okay, we signed up Racine, Wisconsin. Who else is like in the orbit of the team there, right? And if you were able to say, like, give me 1 degree, and this is what you're talking about, lookalikes, give me 1 degree removed from people who work at Racine, but are like in some other local
Yeah.
government role. Now you know who exactly like to reference when you're reaching out or who to ask for an intro. So I think that's, building that network, I think is a really key part of it. One question I have for you, it's kind of, helps me learn as much about the market and what our customers want as anything. But if you had a magic wand over the next 12 months and we could solve any go-to-market problem, what would you choose? What comes to mind? Helping you grow the fastest? Like what do you think would help you grow the fastest?
So I think it's a combination of things, but it boils down to right now we're in this interesting phase of we have a really neat, compelling free product we've been moving. And that helps us introduce folks to the Poly ecosystem. So the question with that one really is, how do we bring that to folks quickly?
Is that a self sign up thing? What's the like? Can they go to the website and just go through a sign up form or sign up?
Yeah, there's a little like sign up form, and then you spend 15 minutes with our client success team who can walk you through on how to add it to the website. So it's really straightforward. And then before we set up the call with you, we even have it all pre-set up. So it's the AI search tool I kind of mentioned, Prospect Park had. So answers all the questions, things like that. What is key there though is we've now started to see a ton of traction in these states, and we're now starting to do like those marketing case studies on it. I think like the biggest thing for us to solve there would be like how the magic wand would be like, who is a lot of folks are really excited about AI. They're thought leaders, but they might not be the same roles always. And so, we've been able to plug in with a few communities being, innovators, but it'd be neat to see like, hey, who's been posting, talking about AI? Who's been bringing that up? Who's excited about it? With a magic wand, if we could wave that and just know that, I mean, that would be huge.
Where do you think those people are posting? Is it like LinkedIn or some government forums? Like, is that where is that happening?
Mostly LinkedIn, but government forums is a great example too. Like who's hosting talks? Sometimes they write articles or something like that. Council meetings, maybe they brought it up, right? Like which councils are talking about it, which aren't. Just helps like who's ready, who's excited about it. Because there's three categories of folks. There's like the early adopters who I think they're coming to Polymorphic because like we're probably doing the most stuff in generative AI right now with that, client segment. They're coming anyways. Like they're excited about it. But the early majority is one we're excited about, which is these folks who honestly, the way I describe it is like they want to use AI, they have some concerns, but they don't know where to start. Like that's a group that, when we get in touch with them, they're like, this is amazing. This is the easiest way for us. Or it's low risk, great, but scaling that up would be huge for us.
Got it. Yeah. So my summary there is like helping companies understand where the intersection of like their product and the interests of the people, not just the roles in the departments, because that doesn't always tell you the perfect answer, but people's interests. What are they posting about? What are they talking about? That sort of stuff would be useful too. So great. Really appreciate it, man. Well, this is the first of hopefully many. And again, couldn't be more thrilled to have you as a friend and as a partner. So thanks for joining us this early in the journey.